Previously on Ballz.
Cool. All right, time to get into the flush out today. A couple of things. First of all, Mr. Campese, good afternoon.
You're actually talking about silent S's, are you, in people's names? How boring are you guys at the moment?
Not at all, Mr. Campese.
Talking about French, I'm Italian. Get it right, will you?
Does it have to be big, Maz? I can't watch Twitter while I'm talking to David. I thought this was something new we could do. All right, I was going to make you bigger, David, otherwise we can't see you on the screen.
I must say, Darren, you're talking about Twitter. Last week I was driving my son to work, to school to work, and I was with my wife. And what happened was, this car came past me, and this lady was tweeting in both hands, and she was driving with the wheel with her legs.
No.
And then she was tweeting going past me at about 80 kilometres.
Crazy. It is
Very
absolutely
talented,
crazy.
Very talented.
It's amazing what women can do in a car.
Exactly.
They can drink coffee, do makeup, talk on the phone, and all that stuff, and still drive. Amazing.
How does know she was tweeting?
Yeah, because David could see her. He looked next to her, and there she was, the phone up and twittering going on. It's crazy. First of all, got a good Aussie band for you today. Someone actually recommended we play them, so I thought perfect time after the flush out. AC/DC.
Oh, of course. What a great band, huh?
Great band. Never played AC/DC after the flush out. And secondly, we got to organise you some of that Rake Nyetling Shiraz that he was talking to us about a little earlier on.
There we go.
From the Valdevie estate.
Fantastic.
Yeah, he's got a share there, so he's going to, next time he's up here, he's going to bring some of that through. We'll get some to you.
There we go.
What a weekend of rugby, huh?
Well, I wasn't far wrong. Well, I was with the Crusaders.
Yeah.
But the Sharks, and as I said, to the Stormers, once they're behind, they cannot play catch-up rugby because they cannot score tries.
Yeah.
They threw the ball around, looked very good, but I tell you that nobody could break the line. They're very predictable, and unfortunately, as I said, you cannot win games by defence. You've got to attack.
Yeah.
And the Sharks wanted it more, and they played some great rugby.
They are playing awesome rugby, and we'll talk about that one extra week now and how much of a difference that makes, particularly with the travel. Just talk about the Stormers first of all. And when you look at that side, as you say, penetration-wise, they don't. I mean, if you've got a very organised defence, as the Sharks have got at the moment, they really don't look like penetrating in any way or have any ideas to try and penetrate that a good defence. Juan de Jong's probably the one guy who seems to, look to run into space and find those. But you need a guy like him to kind of get into space and break the line to try and bring some of those, because they've got exciting backs.
Yeah, but what sort of happened, if you have a look at the game, I don't think there was one occasion where the centres for the Stormers got up against the props of the Sharks. So they weren't out, you know what I mean? What you're trying to do in this game is you're moving the ball from side to side. What you ideally want is you want your backs to get up against forwards, so therefore you can obviously do a few things. But it never happened, and you could just see from the start of the game, all they wanted was penalties, and when they weren't forthcoming, Applin scored a good try, but he only touched the ball about 4 times in the game, and he was their danger. Peterson didn't do anything at all. And the winger and Brian was sort of, every time he got it, he thought he was going to run 50 metres to score. And there was no team. When the pressure's on, you've got to come more together as a team, and they just didn't come together as a team. They just were quite happy to kick 3 points instead of saying, guys, we've got to get a try here to get back in this game. And I was sitting there watching, thinking, look, they've got nothing. To play a game like that, the last game of the year, when you're behind and you cannot play catch-up rugby in these semi-finals, which the Crusaders had to try and do on Saturday, and they failed as well.
Yeah. From a Sharks point of view, I mean, as you say, 1 point's good enough to win the game. You kind of, in the beginning you thought, okay, 3-0, 3-all, 6-3, not catch up yet, but they always looked like they were there and they were going to score a try at some stage, and they didn't. The Sharks didn't go into that game just hoping that they would, force pressure, ill discipline, get penalties, and end up in a kicking contest. They always look like, as we've seen with the Sharks over the last few weeks, and as we know the Sharks, a side that likes to score tries and can score tries and back themselves to do that as well.
Well, I have, and I think JP Peterson sort of, the last couple of weeks has played some great rugby, and obviously it was a great call by Plumtree to put him into outside centre position. And it worked, that try he scored in the second half. I mean, the defence was so poor, but Michalak kept them guessing. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to keep the opposition guessing. And what Michalak did, he kicked here, he kicked there, and the opposition's saying, will they run, will they kick? And the more doubt you put in the opposition's mind, the easier it becomes later in the game. And therefore, JP did, it was just a simple try. It wasn't step here under the post and score the try.
Yeah.
And that's when you can see the Stormers were struggling. They were looking at each other like, guys, what's happening here? Because normally they've been in front and all that, but they just didn't seem to want to do that. And every time they turned over silly balls in positions where you've got to hold the ball. I think they remind me a bit of the Brumbies. Did really well all year, came to the biggest game of their lives and just thought they just had to turn up. If you look at the Cheetahs the day before, sorry, the Chiefs, not the Cheetahs, the Chiefs, they just went out there, they wanted it more. You can see, compared to the Crusaders, they wanted to go out there and smash them. And I've always learned to respect someone, you've got to go out there and smash them. And that's what the Chiefs did. But unfortunately, the Stormers didn't turn up on the day.
Simon?
What's the way forward for the Stormers now? Is it a personnel thing, do you think, David?
No, well, as I said, I did speak to one of their coaches, and he was saying that they made a decision at the start of the year not to run the ball, just to defend. And unfortunately, you can only defend for so many games and come close in so many games. But now they've got to look at themselves and say, right, we've got the personnel, but have they got the personnel? They've got some very good individuals, but have they got a team? And that's what the problem is when you come to the semi-finals and final. You need a team. You don't need individuals. And unfortunately, when someone doesn't play well in good teams, other guys step up. But realistically, no one really stood up for the Stormers on Saturday.
James and I were having, I think, our first major disagreement on Friday in the hangout about the forwards and who had the more dominant forward pack. He felt that the Stormers forwards would, as in boxing parlance they used to say, impose their will on the Sharks. I completely disagreed. I just thought with the likes of Alberts there in the engine room, the way their back row were playing, the kind of form they were in, and then that front row as well. I mean, we saw it in, I think it was the first scrum, where Beast absolutely killed Brock Harris in that scrum, and that kind of was the end of it. I mean, their forwards were completely dominated by the Sharks as well, so they didn't even have a platform ready to play off.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you've got to go into a game and know where your strengths and weaknesses are, and the Sharks scrum is their strength, so you've got to attack their strength. If you don't attack their strength, you're going to, obviously, out wide, you're going to struggle as well. And watching the scrums, the Beast was really pumped up, and you could see that in that first scrum. But also, you look at Bismarck Duplessis, the best hooker in the world. The other guy marked against him gets intimidated, and you can see that. They're just powerful guys. And the thing is, again, the Sharks played with a lot of passion, commitment, and they wanted it more. They realised we're not just here to make up the numbers. And that, when you turn up to a game with that sort of commitment and enthusiasm, I mean, that's another 10-15% on your side, because every ruck they were there, they knew exactly how to play the game, where the Stormers threw the ball from side to side to side to side, and that was it, but there's no penetration at all.
Alright, so now the last team to have to go and do this, as the Sharks have done, was the Chiefs. I think when they had to do the back and forth travel to go and play, I don't think they didn't have the quarterfinal aspect back in those days, but they kind of will know what the Sharks are going to be feeling now, because the Sharks have to go back and are back now. They're in Australia, the last time I checked, and I have to go and play in Hamilton in a final. How big is this week going to affect, or how much will it affect the Sharks this week, this another leg of travel back to New Zealand?
Yeah, look, it's pretty tough, and it takes a lot out of you. And I think last year the Crusaders did something very similar. They played the Stormers, I think, in Cape Town, then they flew to play the Reds in Brisbane, and they were a week away. You can see they gave the Reds a good run, but they made a lot of simple mistakes which they normally don't make. And I think, well, if they had an extra week, it would have been a totally different team. The Sharks are the same. I mean, it's very, very difficult to go one way, but then go one way, then go back the other way again. It's going to be very difficult for them. They're going to really struggle. Again, the Chiefs have got to play good rugby, but as you notice, they play a very different style to the Stormers. The Chiefs throw the ball around. They want to move. They want to do it very quickly. And the amount of travel the Sharks are having, I think that might, I think it might actually give them a bit of a hard time. Because if they actually speed the game up further, I think the Sharks are going to struggle in that sort of aspect of the game. What are you laughing at, Darren?
I'm laughing at an SMS I just got from James. I can't read all of it, but it just ends 1-0, Darren. I won't mention the other part that I disagreed with him as well. But there we go. The first word's a two-word phrase, which everyone knows very well. Thanks a lot, Bushbuck. How much will the fact that they're in a final, how much will the fact that they almost made it in 2007, how much will the fact be that the side probably, how many more chances are they going to get to take Super Rugby trophy? How much will that benefit the Sharks and be able to lift themselves, maybe try and negate some of that travel factor?
Yeah, look, it's hard, Darren, because it's I think it's a mental process now. It's not a physical. You can't get better or fitter or stronger in a week. So it's really a mental. You've really got to turn up mentally. And the thing is, if you just say that the Chiefs decided to start the game off in 100 miles an hour and score a couple of quick tries or point, mentally you realise that this is going to be very tough. So I think that's where it comes down to. Obviously, Plumbers knows them pretty well. I think the last time they played them here in Kings Park, they sort of got Sonny Bill Williams pretty much wrapped up early. They had Keegan Daniels out in the backs, so they had two guys against one. Will they do that again, or will the Chiefs look at that and say, right, this is what we've got to expose this week? There's a lot of things going into the game these days, but again, you've just got to turn up. If you turn up, you're there 50-50. So the referee obviously is, again,
Steve Walsh.
Sometimes does some good things and bad things, but again, you've just got to get on with it. If you really want to win, you'll win the game. But again, it's a different one. As you know, if you travelled, if you go back forward, in 2 weeks, it just takes so much energy out of it. So they've obviously got to find some energy somewhere, but they've really got to try and go out there and not make many mistakes and play the game plan they've been doing. Don't go away from what you've been doing.
Just before Simon comes in, I've just got a thought in the back of my mind, though, that the Sharks would have probably preferred to play the Chiefs in the final than the Crusaders. The Crusaders have been somewhat of a bogey team for them. And the Chiefs, they've played in one final, they got hammered by the Bulls. Have they played in another final? I'm trying to think, but the final against the Bulls when they're in a similar situation. The Sharks would probably just fancy their chances of beating the Chiefs more than maybe the Crusaders in a final situation. Do you agree?
Yeah, they would have, and I think the Stormers would have beaten the Chiefs if they won as well, because the Chiefs, you can see that they gave a lot of ill discipline there last week against the Crusaders. The Crusaders, the game was a very quick game, but if you notice the Crusaders, they slowed the game down. They play territory. Crusaders, they want you to play in your half, where the Chiefs are quite happy to run it from their own line, and therefore mistakes happen. So if you've got a good defence pattern, and I think the Sharks would prefer to play the Chiefs, because I think Plumbers knows them pretty well. But also the thing is, we don't take into consideration injury-wise, who's going to last, who won't last. Well, Sonny Bill Williams, that's a lot of things you take into consideration in big games, because if you travel and you've played physically for 2 weeks, your body, if you get one hit on your body somewhere, you mightn't pull through, and that's a big difference between sort of winning and losing as well.
Yeah, we were just qualifying. James is busy tweeting us from the hangout as we're going. He did say it was his Irish philosophy. Back say that the Sharks are going to lose and they'll go and win. He did qualify that. All right, Simon, question?
Yeah, Campo, the Sharks are preparing in Sydney. Why would they do that?
Absolute no idea, mate.
Would it not be a case of trying to negate and break the travel down into 2 bits?
Yeah, but if you actually get there, you're there. You're still going to travel across, and it's 3 hours difference.
But it is New Zealand, David. Come on, it's like Hamilton. You could die of boredom there, can't you?
Hey, it doesn't matter. I'd rather get there and be in the environment and get it and understand what's expected of you and what's going to happen on Saturday.
Yeah.
If you keep them away, you don't know exactly what's been happening, and you just want to know the condition-wise. I don't know. Again, I don't know what they're looking at, but I thought that they would have So I think they only arrived yesterday or today, didn't they? In Sydney.
I think they only arrived. Well, I think they left. Yeah, they were tweeting this morning about being in Sydney already. But the thing is also in Sydney, there is no talk about Super Rugby final. I think no one there gives a toss anymore because the competition's over. So there's one thing about not getting caught up in the whole hype of the final. Whereas obviously in Hamilton, it's a big thing. It's not like this happens every second year there. So there must be absolute rugby fever going on there. It'll all be Chiefs dominant. So it's a way of staying away from it, surely.
Yeah, but that's what you play for. You play for the final. You want to be there. It's like a Rugby World Cup. You can't go and hide when you're in the final of Rugby World Cup. You've got to turn up. You want to be involved to get to be more relaxed. And if you're in the environment, you can hear what they're saying, the supporters and that, which is good. Sometimes it actually revs you up. So again, it's obviously what Plumbers wants, and that's again, I don't know what the reason is behind it, but I actually thought by getting there and getting settled in, the weather-wise, you don't know what sort of weather it's going to be, if it's muddy, if it's going to be, it's going to be rain, because I think in Sydney the grounds might be a lot harder to train on as well, so it could be different training environment.
Weather alert from John here, Camp. I think he knows what the weather is.
Darren,
next week's weather, not last week's.
No, not the weathers, but I just can tell you that they can confirm that they are at Coogee Beach for initial preparation, and then they fly out on Thursday to Hamilton.
It's called Coogee, not Coogee.
Coogee.
He's now pronouncing everything as French because of that correction.
There's no French, there's no S in Coogee.
Okay, cool. Nice place.
It is. That's where my club I play for, Randwick, our oval, was right on the beach. So
they're probably using Randwick facilities then.
Yes,
okay.
Just the oval, not much else.
All right, so there we go. That's when they're going out on Thursday. So look, I mean, you can't point fingers at Plum and say he hasn't had a plan the last 4, 5, 6 weeks. I think when we were down there and had a chat to him when they had to win their next 2 games, there was definitely a clear plan as to how they were going to go through the rest of the competition. So, from a Sharks point of view, I think the guys will feel confident that they have thought about this carefully, and they're not going to go in there just hoping.
No, well, you can't. I mean, if you get to the final, it's not you're not there by luck either. I mean, you've got to make your own luck, and you've got to play the best rugby, and that's what happens about finals. It doesn't matter what happens during the year. It's the most important game. If you lose this, it's just a waste of a season, isn't it?
Yeah. All right. So the prediction, Mr. Campese, the last one for Super Rugby. Remember, we've got the Castle Championship coming up yet after this, so we'll be talking international rugby. Then Australia can get involved in rugby again after their traditional, except for last year, their traditional 2-3 week break.
Yes, I know.
So your prediction on this big final then? Who is going to win?
I mean, if you go for the heart, you've got to go for the Sharks, but I think that you've really got to look at the travel aspect. And, I think the Chiefs had a couple of losses, and then they had they actually played really good rugby against the Crusaders on Saturday, but on Friday, sorry. But the Kiwi teams play a very different style to the South Africans and Australians, and the pace of the game, I don't know if the Sharks can actually keep up with the pace, because it is very different. And you make mistakes in this competition, you finish. So I'll probably go I'll have to go the Chiefs by about 5 points.
Chiefs by 5, spoken by a man who lives in the heart of Sharks country.
But I said by the heart I'd have to go for the Sharks. Well, I did last week. I did pick the Sharks by 6 points if you watch my Twitters.
Yeah, I know, we know.
Yeah, so look, it's going to be a tough one, but I mean, again, you never know how the game goes, what happens, referees' decisions. I think the referee probably would be. What do you think? I think the Walsh would be the referee.
It is Steve Walsh. I've already announced it. Yeah. So he's also got jet lag to contend with.
Well, he doesn't do anything anyway, so he can do it.
There we go. He's the only Aussie ref available. I think that's the only reason why I got the game.
Kiwi, please.
He blows under the Aussie flag. Sorry, he sucks under the Aussie flag.
Disgraceful.
Yeah. Campo, always nice to chat to you. We'll have a chat next week in the FlushOut post final to see what has happened and wrap up the whole competition.
Because if it's, I suppose if the Sharks win, I suppose I'll call a hard time, but that's all right. I accept that.
If the Sharks win, I think we'll all be in Durban. There must be a ticker tape parade planned for next week.
Would be, yes.
Yeah, all the way. It's the shortest one ever. I think it'll just go down. It'll go down past the Sharks board. There we go. No, it'll be awesome if Durban does get that. So we all hold thumbs. Thanks, Campo. We'll chat to you again next
Campo,
week.
before you go, I got a tweet in here.
Now you turn the lights on.
Apparently, the Sharks are in Sydney because their body clocks are more or less still on Sydney time.
Oh, okay. Well, from Aussie time, yeah, from Brisbane.
That's apparently why.
Oh my goodness. Just play the game. Just play.
There we go.
Thanks, Campo. Chat to you next Monday. Cheers, bud.
Hey guys.
Bye. There
Ciao,
we go.
Campo.
David Campese joining us on the FlushOut today. Interesting. And you reckon 6 points, 6 points for the Chiefs. I would look out for you on Friday, by the way, Mr. Hill.
Why?
Hey?
What?
No, James. Listening.
Yeah.
He's going to belt you about 3 times.
I'm going to buy Chiefs jerseys tomorrow. What size are you?
What are you doing?
Can I have a double XL,
Why?
please, Simon?
How can you do that?
I'm supporting the Chiefs this week.
For what reason?
Oh, Simon.
Simon.
Because I don't like the Sharks.
We the best on 3. 1, 2, 3. We the best.
2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mondays to Fridays live on Ballz.co.za. Ballz.co.za.